Now, when people are trying to identify what is the next watch that they want to add to their collection, one of the parameters or requirements might be a certain case size that they're going to be looking at. So what I wanted to do was look at a specific case size and offer up pretty much all the different options, or many of the different options, I can't name everything, across the industry that could be a great jumping off point for individuals looking for a watch in that case size. And today, we're looking at 39 millimeters. So this is a new concept. I've never done anything like this before. So if you like this idea, I could do this with other case sizes. I'm gonna be looking at 23 options at 39 millimeters. So obviously going to be between 39 millimeters and 39.99 millimeters, no exceptions whatsoever. I'm gonna break this down into different categories instead of just ascending in price. So first is going to be the field aviation category. Then I have the everyday watch category, dress watch, dive watch, and then the final category is chronographs and additional complications. I'm gonna focus mostly on mainstream brands, but I will include some micros if I find that they're the most appropriate for that specific segment, and gives me a nice complement when it comes to trying to offer up different watches for a variety of different price ranges. So I'm not gonna be able to spend as much time on all of these watches. I'll have probably full in-depth reviews on many of these models if they do interest you. So I'm gonna spend less time talking about why these are great watches or are great ones to consider, and rather just get down to the details and kind of breeze through this rather quickly compared to what I normally do. All right guys, now before we jump into this video, I do want to say if you like all things smaller watches, 39 millimeters and below, I have a full article looking at some great options for watches for smaller wrists, have dozens of different options there, so definitely check it out. I'll have a link in the description, a nice extension off of some other models that we can't cover in this video that you should still have on your radar. Now first up, we have the field and aviation style category. And to begin here, we're gonna start with Seiko with the SPB 121, the Seiko Alpinist. This comes in with a 39.5 millimeter case, going to wear slightly, I would say larger than that at 40 millimeters with the two crown design on this one, leaning into the traditional Alpinist and coming with the traditional upside with its build quality and also with its water resistance of 200 meters. You have the 6R35 movement on the inside, 13 millimeters in thickness, so not the thinnest watch out there, 70-hour power reserve, sapphire crystal, and is going to be probably the most in alignment with that classic SARB 017 that so many people love. Next up, one of the definitive brands when it comes to aviation style watches, we have IWC with the Spitfire. So these watches come in 39 millimeter case, 10.8 millimeters in thickness, is going to be broader on that end of lug to lug. So this is one where the case size might be deceiving with 50 millimeters of lug to lug distance, 60 meters of water resistance, automatic IWC 32110 on the inside, and a sapphire crystal. If you want that aviation Flieger pilot style watch, IWC has created the formula for that traditional three-hand design that you can see from as entry level here with their Mark 18s as another alternative, going up to their big pilots. They are absolutely one of the pillars of this segment or genre of watchmaking. Next, we have another brand that certainly has some history in the world of Flieger pilot style watches, and that is with Laco. And here I have the Laco Augsburg. The reason I want to go for the Augsburg is this is the more attainable option for their Type A style dial. This is following that Type A Flieger style design with the large markers, the triangular index at 12, and having some great lume in the process. Laco being one of the original 5 providing Flieger style watches during World War II. 39 millimeter case, 46.5 millimeter lug to lug, making this one wear rather true to its case size of 39 millimeters, 50 meters of water resistance, sapphire crystal, and automatic Miyota 821A on the inside, also featuring hacking and hand winding. Now moving along to the next category with everyday watches. And an everyday watch for me is a watch that typically will have at least 50 meters of water resistance, ideally 100 meters of water resistance, can also walk the line of being dressy and casual, and also can be appropriate for a one watch collection if you ever were crazy enough to do just that. Now, first up, we have the SPB 167. This is known as the Seiko Sharp Edge. There are a few different dial variations to go for. This one comes in a blue dial, 39.3 millimeters, 11.1 millimeter thickness, lug to lug of 47.2 millimeters, so gonna work closer to a 40 millimeter case, 100 meters of water resistance, sapphire crystal, 6R35 movement on the inside with that extended power reserve of 70 hours compared to the former 6R15. But really the star of the show here is going to be the dial. That triangular recessed array of design is just cool. It's going to be entrancing when you look at it underneath the sapphire crystal, and shows one of the more unique dial configurations in this price segment of around $1,000. Next up, we have the Longines Conquest. So these are available in multiple sizes, one of those being 39 millimeters. These are basically taking the Hydro Conquest, dropping the bezel and creating, or at least the rotating bezel, and creating a more everyday style approach while still offering 300 meters of water resistance, thickness of 11.5 millimeters here, lug to lug of 48 millimeters, so wearing slightly larger than that 39 millimeter case, closer to 40. Sapphire crystal, movement is an ETA A31.L11, so the L.888 caliber from Longines. This is a movement that is made in collaboration with ETA and is made exclusively for Longines, creating a 70 plus hour power reserve, 72 hours approximately, and beating away at 3.5 hertz for that movement frequency. Now, next up, we have one of my personal favorites and a watch I actually have on my wrist right now, and this is the Omega Globemaster. Probably one of the most overlooked offerings from Omega. A lot of cool things with this watch. 39 millimeter case, 12.5 millimeter thickness. The lug to lug is going to be rather condensed, except when you factor in the bracelet that with that lug to lug, it will make it wear larger. I wear this on my wrist all the time. I love it. 100 meters of water resistance. But really the magic here is with the movement and with the bezel. So people will look at this fluted design. This design of fluted bezel actually looks back to vintage Constellation references from the 1960s with that C-case design. So if you want that fluted bezel design style, this is really where this is coming from, but here it is with a twist. Comes with a tungsten carbide bezel, which essentially is going to be as indestructible as you're going to find a watch material to be. This is used commonly in weapons and defense systems, and also with the movement on the inside with Omega and the Constellation family commonly being known as that precision chronometer watch with that observatory chronometer on the back, with their wins with different chronometer trials and the reference to those different stars on that case back. This is almost that new generation with the Globemaster. When this was unveiled, it was the first introduction of the METAS certification. This 8900 caliber is seen in other watches now, but at the time it really was a trailblazer in what it was offering up. 60-hour power reserve. You also at that second position, which I love, and kind of giving into more reason why it was called the Globemaster, with the bi-directional isolated movement of that hour hand. So when you're traveling, this is a dream of a watch to use. This watch is heavy, but I love it. As somebody that loves those vintage pie pan style dials, but wants that Omega just build quality from a modern context, this is right in my wheelhouse. Absolutely love this one. Next up, we have Cartier with the Santos de Cartier large. So there is a smaller mid-size version. This 39 millimeter option is going to wear slightly larger at 47.5 millimeter lug to lug. It is going to be relatively slim though at 9 millimeters in thickness, 100 meters of water resistance, and automatic in-house caliber on the inside with a sapphire crystal. This is also available in two-tone, which personally, I think the Santos is one of those watches that actually might be cooler in two-tone than it is in just traditional steel. But to me, I think the Santos is arguably one of the most slept on watches from a mainstream brand perspective. Of course, it's beloved by many and known by many or seen in stores because Cartier is such a mass produced brand and also being one of the leading names in luxury products. Still, with the history with Santos Dumont and the Santos as a collection and being one of the most important watches ever made, the Santos collection, no question about it, I think this is a great watch to consider. And if you're somebody that wants that hybridized approach of dressy every day, this is absolutely it. So this watch was recently discontinued in the past year because of a new iteration of the Explorer, but here I'm looking at the 214-270 Rolex Explorer. 39 millimeters, when it was unveiled, people had some pushback. I think many are excited about the 36 millimeter being back. However, now with this being gone, I think there's also many people out there that are now feeling like, oh man, 39 millimeters, that actually did work. I do sort of miss that. So this one came in 11 millimeters in thickness, 47 millimeter lug to lug, automatic in-house movement on the inside, COSC certified, plus or minus 2 seconds a day as quoted by Rolex, and a sapphire crystal. You're now gonna have to deal with the second-hand market, which isn't great when you're talking about Rolex, but still, I think for 39 millimeters, this watch, if you can get it at a decent price, still a good one to consider. And then for another watch in the everyday category, 39 millimeters, the AP Jumbo, the new reference with the 16202 ST. So this is a new model release for the 50-year anniversary of the Royal Oak in 2022 and essentially looks the same as the previous 15202 with its looks, with its bracelet, its dial, and what it's going for. The big change here is with the movement on the inside. Now, first off, 39mm case, 8.1mm thickness, 50 meters of water resistance, which is kind of stretching it here when it comes to the everyday category, but it is the AP Royal Oak, so we'll give it a pass here. But the new movement here is the 7121. This comes with a new assembly, finish on the movement, and also a 55-hour power reserve. For this year and this year only, that rotor on that movement is going to have a reference to the 50-year anniversary, and in future years will then go away. So kind of a cool way to get into it if you can, of course, get your hands on one. Now, next up, we have the dress category, and to begin, we're going to look at Tissot. First with the Tissot Lac. This is a line that I even overlook at times because there's so much fascination with the PRX collection now, the Gentleman collection, the Sea Star, that people overlook. This is still one of the best-selling collections from Tissot. This version that we're looking at here is the Midnight Blue version of the Lac, coming in at 39.3mm case size, thickness of 10mm, lug-to-lug of 48.2mm, water resistance of 30 meters, and a Powermatic 80 movement on the inside, extended power reserve of 80 hours, sapphire crystal. And this, for around $600, is just one of those watches of many from Tissot that is just no nonsense, delivering value at that entry-level segment for a Swiss mechanical watch. Next up here, we have the JLC Master Ultra Thin Moon, one of my favorites from the brand. 39mm case on this one, right on the money. And probably one of my favorite moon phases also for this segment. 9mm for the thickness, so relatively thin here. 45.8mm with the lug-to-lug distance. So we're going to wear rather true to that case size, maybe still being slightly larger just because the dial to bezel ratio is really leaning in the direction of that dial. 50 meters of water resistance, and getting an automatic JLC 925 AA on the inside. So this has the extended power reserve of 70 hours. It has that beautiful moon phase at that 6 o'clock position with the subsidiary date surrounding it. The moon phase disc is beautiful to look at, and I think one of the best moon phase watches and just dress watches for $10,000. No questions about it. Next, we have Grand Seiko with the SBGK007. And this is a watch, 39mm case, 11.8mm thickness, lug-to-lug of 43.5mm, and a water resistance rating of 30 meters. And that 9S63 movement on the inside, so this is one of their 4 Hertz movements, 72 hours of power reserve, impeccably finished as you would expect. You have the small seconds and power reserve that work kind of in tandem with each other to have that symmetry compared to some of the other offerings where people will point out that maybe the symmetry is a problem with the power reserve indicator. This one is a bit more balanced, and of course looks the part and is packaged in a way as people come to expect from Grand Seiko. And now for our last in the category of dress watches, we have the Patek Philippe Calatrava, one of the most legendary dress watches, with the 6119. So this watch comes in 39mm case with a price of $30,000, remaining one of the entry points to the world of Patek Philippe. Thickness of 8mm, lug-to-lug of 46.9mm, so right in the ballpark of 39mm with that case wearability. 30 meters of water resistance, and on the inside has the Patek Philippe manual caliber, the 3255 PS. This movement is improving off the older 215 movement that was showcased in many Calatravas of the past, also extending that power reserve of 65 hours on this one, and also with this watch design coming with that traditional hobnail bezel format that so many people have come to love with the Calatrava model family. Moving along to the diver category, we have a few to go through here. First, with a micro brand, and starting at that more attainable section of the market, we have the Baltic Aquascaphe. This is a watch that has become beloved with its vintage styling, and Baltic has become I would say, poster child of the micro brand community and ascending beyond that. They just have been able to nail it with almost every release from the beginning of their launch in around 2017. So this watch comes in 39mm case, 12mm thickness, lug-to-lug of 47mm, 200 meters of water resistance, and powered by an automatic Miyota 9 series movement on the inside, variety of different versions to choose from. And I think for that price, you can't question it. It's a really solid position piece for that price range. Now for our next one, this is probably one of the definitive watches that allowed 39mm to come back into the fold for sports watches, especially dive watches, and that is the Tudor Black Bay 58. This entire model family, since its release in 2018, has taken the industry by storm in terms of popularizing 39mm as a case size and really allowing Tudor to emerge another key segment of the Black Bay collection. 39mm case, 11.7mm thickness, lug-to-lug of 47.5mm, 200 meters of water resistance, and also getting a slimmer movement and a smaller movement on the inside with the automatic MT5402 sapphire crystal, variety of different colors to choose from now, and case materials with sterling silver, 18 karat gold, and bronze as a boutique edition released in 2021. Next up, we have the Oris Aquis. Oris Aquis, probably one of the definitive points of value for dive watches, around $2,000. The Aquis is available in a variety of different sizes. This one here at 39.5 millimeters, thickness of 12.6 millimeters, lug to lug of 48 millimeters, though with that integrated bracelet, I think wears even more compact. I would always take at least 0.5 millimeter off the total case size if you want to get a good projection of how these will wear on the wrist. 300 meters of water resistance. For these 39 millimeter versions, you will have the Sellita on the inside, the SW200, and a sapphire crystal. When I think of $2,000 dive watches, the Oris Aquis is one of the first to come to mind. Now moving back to Omega here, we have the Omega Planet Ocean 39.5 millimeter. So this is a watch that has become popular, I would say, since, of course, the James Bond collaborations with Daniel Craig. 14.5 millimeters in thickness, 45 millimeter lug to lug, water resistance of 600 meters, and the Planet Ocean, just as a collection, as a heads up, is one of those collections that is tested to the limit in regards to their underwater capabilities. We saw that with the Ultra Deeps just unveiled in 2022. On the inside here, we have the Omega 8800 caliber, still a great coaxial escapement movement, master chronometer certified, has a single barrel, so not gonna have the same extended power reserve as some other movements that they have, but still very well done, and also having that distinct broad arrow hour hand that has become a huge point of reference for this design family. Now for our last watch in the dive category, we have Glashütte Original with the CQ. So these are available in a couple different sizes, and the 39.5 millimeter being the smaller of the two versions. This is not going to have that large pano date, instead going to have the date at 3 o'clock. Also going to move away from the open case back of the larger pano date versions, which is probably the #1 downside of this watch, but still across the board, very well finished. 12 millimeter thickness, 47 millimeter lug to lug, pretty much wears exactly parallel to that of the Black Bay 58 if you ever tried one of those on. 200 meters of water resistance, fantastic lume, and one of the most beautiful movements for a dive watch, although of course not being able to see it in this circumstance. And now for our last category, we have complications. And for complications, I'm looking at chronographs, GMTs, full calendar watches, perpetual calendars, everything of the sort. And to start us off here, we have Grand Seiko. And for this Grand Seiko watch, we have the SBGJ 249. So this is a 2021 release. It was developed with an intention to evoke the high summer of Japan, being known as the Shosho. I have a full review on this one. Probably one of the more striking dials from their GMT collection. $6,800 for the price, 39.5 millimeters for the case size, thickness of 14.1 millimeters. So this one is going to be rather top heavy compared to some of the others, but a lot of that is coming from the sapphire crystal too, so keep it all in mind. Automatic Grand Seiko 9S86 movement on the inside, 46.9 millimeter lug to lug, making this one wear rather true to that 39.5 millimeter size. The only thing I will say here as the major downside is that 30 meters of water resistance, but for $6,800, getting a true GMT movement and watch at that with a great finished dial, I think still is probably one of the better offerings from Grand Seiko, and just for GMT offerings across the board of the luxury segment. Now for one of my personal favorites and one of the most wearable Speedmasters out there, the Omega Speedmaster 321, the Ed White. So this watch was unveiled in 2020, right at the turn of the new year, before the lockdowns and everything that was going to happen in that year of 2020. But this watch comes with that 39 millimeter case that I just love the wear on the wrist of. The first Omega in space could also be mentioned here, but this one still being in production and still being one of my favorite Omegas, I have to mention it here. 14 millimeters for the thickness, 48 millimeter lug to lug, 50 meters of water resistance. But the real star of the show here is the manual caliber on the inside, the Omega 321, the movement that went to the moon, Lemania base, used by all different brands in the industry, from the likes of Patek Philippe, Vacheron Constantin, and many others. For our next watch, we have the Zenith Chronomaster Open. So this is a new unveiled version of the Chronomaster Open. These were previously in larger case sizes. These new versions for 2022 come in at 39.5 millimeters, Thickness at 13.1 millimeters, water resistance of 100 meters, and come with the new movements unveiled with the Chronomaster Sport with that 3600 base. This is the 3604, having some slight modifications, but the big thing here is going to be the 1/10 of a second indicator for that chronograph for the central seconds, essentially maximizing the possibilities of that 5 Hertz movement on the inside with that El Primero caliber. Of course, with the open name, this watch is going to have some visible elements of the movement. You have that purple escapement wheel, the exposed balance, and partially showing of some of the gear train. The other cool thing about this one is that it does still have the indication of that 60 seconds while still showing some transparent view of the movement underneath. So from one 2022 release to another, we have the Tudor Black Bay Pro. Probably one of my favorites from Watches and Wonders this year. There was a lot of talk about the thickness of this watch. I believe at the time of releasing this video, I will have another video reviewing this watch specifically, so I would recommend checking that out. I think the thickness conversation definitely overblown. This wears pretty well for me. Of course, I'd love it for it to be thinner, but with the MT5652 on the inside, there were not many possibilities. I also had a conversation with Ander Ugarte, the head designer of Tudor, just talking about designing this watch, some of the hidden elements of it, which I would also recommend checking out if you've not seen it. 39 millimeter case, 14.6 millimeters for that thickness. Also factor in that about 1.5 millimeters of that is coming from that dome sapphire crystal. Lug to lug of 47.5 millimeters, water resistance of 200 meters, so nice to see there. And of course, the true GMT movement for this watch, COSC certified, $4,000 price point, and then evoking a lot of the feel and look of the Explorer 2 reference 1655 from the 1970s. And now for our last watch here, we have the Patek Philippe. So this watch is one of Patek Philippe's grand complications with its perpetual calendar and one of the more beautiful arrays at that in the contemporary collection. Also remarkably under 10 millimeters thick for a perpetual, plus coming with an automatic movement on the inside, the PP240Q, sapphire crystal, 30 meters of water resistance, and of course, a 39 millimeter case. But all right guys, that is my video looking at 23 different watches at 39 millimeters in case size. If you like this video and the style of content, definitely give it a thumbs up, subscribe, and hit the bell icon. The thumbs up button would really help me in whether or not you guys want to see more of this for different case sizes. And if I do get enough encouragement, what would be the next case size that you'd want me to take a look at? 39 millimeters felt like a great place to start because it seemed to be a size that I think universally people like. Not too small, not too big, right in the middle, and I think everybody can be happy with a watch of that size. Also, definitely check out teddybaldassarre.com, full authorized dealer of 30 brands, quick and fast fulfillment, dedicated customer support, and a full factory warranty for all the new products that we offer. And if you want to stay up to date with the content, be sure to subscribe to the newsletter, and also be sure to check out the Instagram, see some great photos of watches in the process, and see what's coming down the pipe from the video side of things. But guys, thank you again so much for watching. Be well, and I will see you all very soon.